Welcome into day 2 of the 24th edition of the Tour of Magnificent Qinghai in northern China. 8 days of stage racing, where riders need to be comfortable with their head above the clouds. Yesterday, stage 1 was in the downtown streets of Xining, and early on it was a small breakaway that included the likes of Nich Komach, Timothy Ivanov and Vadim Pronsky. They would pick up sprint ace points, and it would be Timothy Ivanov who would pick up the King of the Mountain points. But as history proves, it would eventually always come back together. Perfect conditions allowed for the riders to push some pretty big gears, but when the pain train decides to get going and the riders decide to chase down the brake at speeds of more than 60 kilometres an hour, it was always going to come down to a sprint finish. Nich Komach for the Factor Racing team was strong all day. A man who was a specialist in the time trial position. 22 trade teams, 155 riders in all. Really just an opportunity for all of the riders just to flush the legs, get rid of the travel, get rid of the flight, knowing that the big days were to come. When it did come down to the final sprint, all the big teams were in the mix, but it would ultimately go the way of the very impressive Manuel Peñalva, the Italian, riding for Team Polti Vista Malta. Edward Guangzhou of Huangsheng. Vana Taishan team would finish second. Alexander Selby of Lingstar, the Denmark rider, would finish in third. Henok Mulubraham rounding out our top 10, the man who won this race 2 years ago. He was 4th last year and very much one of the race favourites for the 24th edition. Well, one of the great traditions at any bike race is the Sinai, and Caja Rural full of specialist hill climbers getting a warm reception from a very, very supporting public. Man wearing the green jersey today will be Edward Guangzhou, finishing second yesterday. Manuel Peñalva leading at the overall points classification, but of course he will be in yellow, and therefore this man has the responsibility of that sprint age jersey. King of the Mountains, Timothy Ivanov of the Chengdu cycling team. Great for one of the trade teams out of China to wear one of the most prestigious jerseys in all of cycling. And there is the man who will start day 2 in the yellow jersey after that very good stage victory yesterday. Manuel Peñalva, the Italian, riding for Team Polti Visit Malta. Responsibility of his teammates to try and keep him in that yellow jersey at the end of stage 2. But he is a sprinter, and today is a very, very tough day with riders going up to 11,000 feet in altitude. Henok Mulubraham, the man riding for Astana, one of the pre-race favourites, the winner from 2 years ago. He is the African Continental Champion and wears the colours to represent that. A 3-time winner, in fact. So weather conditions today, 22 degrees, but the mercury is rising. Humidity just 59%. Not a lot of wind out on the course. But they know that early on in this stage, the first big climb comes. The Beishan Yaku climb, 9.8 kilometres at an 8% gradient, reaching a height of just over 11,000 feet. And there is Edward Guangzhou King of the Mountains, Timmy of Fate, Ivanov. Manuel Peñalva from Team Polti, Visit Malta in the yellow. And our leading Asian rider, Hassan Say Falahayafad, who was superb yesterday. So, around about 11:30 local time in northern China, the stage 2 got underway. As mentioned, a total distance of 151 kilometres. Might not be the longest stage by international cycling terms, but there is a lot of altitude. In fact, there is 2,243 metres of vertical climbing. As we look at the magnificent scenery of the Qinghai province in northern China. Not a lot of time to warm up today because the first big climb starts literally around the 10-kilometre mark, but it's about the 25-kilometre mark that the big climb up the Beishan Yaku mountain begins. All of these riders having gone through well-established pre-stage warm-up protocols, individually and collectively, to get their nervous systems up, to flush any lactic acid from yesterday, and to hope that they can find their legs early. And that is the standings after stage 1. So let's have a look at today's stage. Duoba to Huzhu. As mentioned, 100 and just over 150 kilometres, but it includes the brutal Beishan Yaku mountain. Second climb of the day will also be significant. The Liajan climb, just 3 kilometres, but it just comes in the middle. It's a nasty little climb, just over 6%. Opportunity for the riders and those one-day riders over some undulating terrain to look to settle in for the peloton, maybe to go to work and chase down any breaks. However, the final climb of the day is the Shuaibei Yakao climb of 6.1 kilometres at just over 6%. From there, it's pretty much a run down through to the finish line. Large crowd will be waiting. Will Manuel Peñalva of Team Polti Vista still be in the yellow jersey, or will it sit on the shoulders of another? City of Huzhu, well, it sits at around 7,500 feet. You must be comfortable with your head above the clouds. So the riders having just gone over the Liajan climb, and we can tell you at the moment that we do have a race leader out in front, and that is Simon Pallot, the man from Li Ning Star, the Swiss rider. Got into a break early with the likes of Petros Mengs, another one of these remarkable athletes out of Eritrea. Was in that early break with the likes of Barak and Komach, who was so aggressive yesterday riding for the Factor team. Was also in that initial break, and now it is the boys, by the looks of it, from Astana, possibly on the front, looking to just drive this train. Also the team from VF Bardiani, Caja Rural, full of climbers. Just an undulating stage. Just looking at the profile, we talk about just over 150 kilometres, 151.4. Well, I can tell you it's about 110 kilometres of hope, and then literally is about 40 kilometres of truth, because it is a very tough last 40 kilometres for all of these riders. And it is Astana on the front, very much looking to ride for the likes of Aaron Gate and probably Martin Lopez, or the man who really has established his reputation in this race, the great Henok Mulubran, 4th last year, winner 2 years ago. And earlier on today, it was Nish Colmack who picked up the valuable 5 sprint ace points. Adam Braddock and Simon Pelor running out our points getters. That sprint stage came at 24.8 kilometres. Always tell when there's a little bit of pace on, you just start to see that big long line, what we affectionately call the pain train. This is the top of the Baishan Yaku climb, absolutely brutal. So situation on the road at the moment, just looking at that King of the Mountain, Simon Pelor, who leads this race, Petros Mings, and Johan Sobel, another one of these riders riding for this very good Chengdu trade team based in the city of Chengdu, who in August will host the World Games. And World Games, of course, the Olympic Games for sports that are not at the Olympic Games, trying to get into the Olympic program. As we go to the front of the bike race, and here is Simon Pelor riding for Li Ning Start. He's got a good supporting cast around him too. It's very much an international team, another one of these Chinese trade teams. Includes Josh Kench, one of 2 New Zealanders. The other New Zealander being Luke Mudgway. Mudgway very aggressive yesterday. He's got Alexander Solby, Alexei Shunko, and Ramon Sheko, who's also a very good mountain climber. So no real responsibility from Li Ning Star to do any work today. It's an interesting career has Simon Pelor, currently riding for Li Ning Star. He's 32 years of age, so a little bit of a veteran. Raced previously for the Tudor Pro cycling team in 223, 224 before shifting to the Li Ning Star team. Used to ride too for Trek Segafredo, previously too, back part of Team Illuminati, the United States-based team, back in 2017, 2018. And this here is Petros Mings, who again is just part of this remarkable group of athletes coming from the African nation of Eritrea. You look at the likes of the great Bini Gourmet, who became the first African to win the green jersey or to win any major jersey in the Tour last year. First black rider to ever win a stage, winning stages 3 and 8 and 12 last year in the Tour de France. And now you've got this young man, and you talk about the likes of Henok Mulubran, and suddenly Eritrea, almost a national sport in that part of the world. So Pelor, he is very much an all-rounder, good GC rider. Had a stage win in the Tour of Hainan back in 2018, and stage wins in the Tour of Thailand. Overall GC winner of the Tour of Bretagne Cycliste back in 2023. Tour de Mirabel, won that back in 2019. So as we now just start to see the peloton close in on Petros Mings, but it's been a valiant effort all day. It's very much auditioning possibly for higher honours in the future, but it still continues to be the Astana team on the front, just driving the train. It was always going to be a stage that was going to come apart from the back in terms of the peloton. Just go back to the Baishan Yaku climb, 11,000 feet. Just over 3,300 metres. You think of rides like the Tourmalet and the Tour de France at 2,100 metres, will just give you an idea of just how high they are. when you think that altitude starts at about 2,000 feet and starts to have a physiological change on the body, you can imagine just how much these athletes are suffering when the pace does go on. Lungs basically just being attacked by razor blades and bonfires in the legs. Astana team led by the New Zealander Aaron Gate, Commonwealth Games road cycling champion, in fact 5-time Commonwealth Games gold medalist, New Zealand time trial champion. You've got Mikel Gazzoli, Martin Lopez has the ability to win this tour. You've got Florian Kajami, Anton Kuzman, another one, and then of course the great Henok Mulubran. Santiago Umba rounding out that team of 7. So this part of the stage is what we'd probably best described as undulating. Good for the punchers, good for the one-day riders. There is Timofey Ivanov, winner of the King of the Mountains. Just going back to King of the Mountain results earlier, up the Beijing climb, it was Simon Bello who picked up the 9 points. It was Petros Mings who was second across the line. Johan Sobal picking up 5 points. Great to see the man from Iran too, Saeed Savradeh, picking up a valuable 2 points for finishing 5th over the top of the mountain. The man who rides for the TR New Day Hotel cycling team. Top climbers in this year's tour: Martin Lopez, Giovanni Carboni, Mikel Bizcarra, Henok Mulubran and Fernando Barcelo. Barcelo, of course, riding for Caja Rural. What is going through the mind of this man? He is absolutely 100% committed. Cadence looks good, pushing a big gear on the front, small gear on the back. Time trial position will probably be in what we would describe as a very high aerobic state. Just over 55 kilometres an hour, deep rim carbon wheels. Tyres slightly deflated. Just trying to use the downhills to recover, not to burn too many matches. Key thing for him will be making sure that he just eats and drinks, doesn't miss a drink, doesn't miss any food. And it's not a sport where you ever want to get hungry. And he'll just be hoping that there is a bit of confusion back in the main peloton. He'll have his earpiece in, he'll have his director sportif talking to him, telling him what is happening behind. Just under 2-minute lead though. The stage last year was won by the Burgos rider Eric Fagundes, remarkable rider David Baldacchini from Team Cototec. Vinny Fantini would end up finishing 2nd this year. That is now Solution Tech Vinny Fantini. Baldacchini competing again, wearing number 31. Saeed Savradeh, who would finish 5th over the top of the climb earlier this morning, would finish 3rd in the stage, the man from the Hyundai Hotel cycling team, so he's got plenty of experience here. And then the other rider, a man that a lot of people are also potentially picking to win the race this year, Guillermo Silva for Kaha Rural, who ended up finishing second on GC overall last year because it was his fellow teammate Jefferson Cepeda who would end up winning the tour in a total of time of 26 hours, 58 minutes and 47 seconds. But here comes the pain train, folks, and it is Astana on the front who realise that potentially a lot of damage, even on just the second stage of this 8-day stage race. There is one climb which can still have a huge outcome on the overall race, and that is going to come at around about the 100-kilometre mark, and around about 20 kilometres from now. It's a steady climb, officially just 6.1 kilometres, but really they start going uphill. And the total climbing is around about 20 kilometres. So plenty of experience as Simon below. Got into that break early. Just hugging every little curve, just trying to reduce the distance between himself and where he is on this stage to that finish line. Just trying to find a metre here, a metre there. How often do we see bike races coming down to the smallest of margins? And we often talk about elite level sport, trying to find that elusive 1% in performance. Well, when you look at sometimes these races which could end up going 3.5, 4.5 hours, and it can come down to less than a second. Well, it's almost 0.0001% in performance, isn't it? Sometimes the difference between a good night's sleep and a bad night's sleep. I have a bit of a saying that if you're an aspiring athlete and that alarm goes at 5 o'clock in the morning, don't push that snooze button. That's 10 minutes a day, 70 minutes a week. It's often the difference between good and great. Go back through the peloton and all the teams staying together. VF Group Bardiani there, Solution Tech, Vinny Fantini in the black and the yellow. And there is the famous colours of Euskaltel Euskadi. We've got the Quick Pro team, Petrolike, the Factor Racing team, Team Pulte, Visit Malta in the green, the white and the red. The Istanbul team, based out of Turkey. Their colours are almost a deep blue going on purple with a maroon shoulder. And there is Henok Mulubrand, the continental African champion. 3 times he has won that African Continental Championship. Yeah, world-class camera crew brought in from Europe, motorbike camera crew. Wonderful group of Chinese as well covering this particular event. Nice good high cadence here from Pelor. So might just have a little bit of a tailwind, possibly on a slight downhill. Spinning those legs around about 90 to 95 revolutions per minute. Probably around about the 95 revolutions per minute, which seems to be these days optimum cadence. Still come down to the individual. Some athletes prefer to just push those slightly bigger gears and therefore a slightly lower cadence. Others like to spin a little bit more. Probably the best example back in the day of Lance Armstrong, and liked to spin a lot more. Jan Ullrich, the great German rider, tended to push a much bigger gear, therefore a much lower cadence. Sometimes when you see riders that have a much higher cadence suddenly in a flat zone, you just see the cadence drop off. That can often just be a sign of fatigue, where they start to just lean on the slightly heavier gears, slightly bigger gears. You see that a lot in bike racing. You'll sometimes see riders, particularly on the big climbs, they'll have anguish on their face, they'll be hurting, but they've got good form. And you'll hear me talk about that over the next 7 stages, that sometimes the best way of telling whether a rider's in trouble or not is to look at the form, start to see a little bit more head movement, shoulders beginning to drop a little bit more, riders just constantly searching for a gear. And it's that sort of no man's land where one gear just feels too high. An easier gear feels a little bit too easy, and you just can't find that gear in between. So this is the Qinghai X body wrap team. Heath Will, Wash Finlay. So just putting their hands up, team vehicles, dropping back, could be acting in the role of domestique. All Australian team, the Qinghai body wrap team, Cameron Scott in there as well, William Heffernan. There is the great New Zealand rider, one of the veterans at 36 years of age, Aaron Gate. So are they riding for Gate? Are they riding for Mulubran? Or are they riding for the great Martin Lopez? 3 riders who potentially can win this bike race amongst a group of 7. You're going to give yourself a good chance. You just wonder when they do start to approach the final climb of the day, Shuaibei Yaku, which will see the riders go back to 2,900 metres, whether or not Astana really do just start to tighten the screws and put the hurt on the rest of this group. See if they can just blow it apart. Some very good climbers though, just sitting back comfortably. They'll be biding their time. Very, very good group of riders coming from Kaha Rural. Yeah, beautifully set up. Simon Pelot. Nice smooth pedal cadence. Professional riders got that very beautiful sort of circular motion. Amateur riders almost look like they're sort of duck walking at times on their heels. Want to have any little chink in that pedal motion, wanting to make sure that you keep that power evenly throughout the 360 degrees. And these riders will have power meters on their bikes, so they'll be knowing how much wattage they'll be pushing out each time they do dance on the pedals. Of course, that's what they tend to use too for a lot of training. Then they combine that with heart rate, download all of that data, gives them some training zones, take races and go, look, this is how much energy I will be potentially using if I do find myself in a breakaway. So you need to show your body in training how to do it so you can adapt. Almost a dress rehearsal. And there he is, Aaron Gate, out of Auckland Grammar School. Track cyclist initially. Dominated the Commonwealth Games back in Birmingham in 2:22. Unlucky at the Olympic Games in Tokyo, part of a very good New Zealand team's pursuit. Ended up crashing in a semi-final when times in the earlier rounds had suggested they were genuine gold medal contenders. That's sport, isn't it? You've got to learn how to lose to learn how to win sometimes. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it. So we have a look at one of the greats in Martin Lopez. Now on the front, really looking to drive it is Anton Guzman, time trial specialist. Man out of Kazakhstan, 42nd overall in this race last year, but very much in the role of doing the work. See the Burgos boys coming up the outside in there, purple and blue. It can be lonely out on your own. So just over 2 kilometre lead. It really is riding very, very well indeed. He'll know that if he can get to the top of the Shiobi Yaku climb, then it's a little bit of a downhill run through to the finish for the next 30 odd kilometres. He's a very good descender. Did a good job on the descent from the Beishan Yaku climb. It's like he's possibly pushing what we would call a 53-14 gear ratio. So a big chain ring on the front. Will range anywhere from 52, 53 to 54 teeth. And then they'll run their cluster at the back, 11 generally being the smallest. Depending on the steepness of the climbs, the biggest, well, could go anywhere from 27, 28, 29 teeth. It looks like at the moment, not quite in as hard a gear. Might run a straight block from 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 before maybe we start to see a little bit of a change in some of those gear ratios for him. New Day cycling team out of Thailand, Saeed Savraday, the man from Iran. He won the Tour of Iran, Azerbaijan, back in 2023 and won it earlier this year in 2025. Three-time national champion of Iran, and he's also won the individual time trial on 3 occasions. So another one trying to establish the sport, I guess, in these so-called non-traditional countries. Soigne's out on the road, ensuring that he does pick up another bin. It'll come down to what's in that too. Imagine carbohydrate, high calorie, this occasion, just trying to cool off, just trying to keep that body core temperature down. So 4 national champions taking part. The Uruguayan champion, Guillermo Silva. Martondina, the national champion of Hungary. Paul Wright, national champion of New Zealand. And Edgar Cadena, the Mexican champion. 3 time trial champions as well. Sunbayar of Mongolia. Wudyak of the Ukraine. And Limnash of the Philippines. So the Astana team, well organised. Obviously, ride a lot on the World Tour. Down here competing at a Pro Tour level. All about UCI points retention and trying to establish himself in that World Tour. The Euskaltel Ustadi team, famous orange colours seen over the years at the highest level in the sport. Euskaltel Ustadi, Jean Aguirre, Ho Keen Moore, Gialde, the likes of Martondina, Mikel Kara, Jordi Lopez, as we mentioned earlier. So just under 60 kilometres to go. Absolutely just dancing on those pedals. Boy, I tell you what, he is going to be playing the ultimate head game here. He will just be hoping that somehow he can stay away. Does he believe he'll have his team management talking to him through his earpiece, encouraging him, letting him know what's going on? He'll be dreaming of these days. He knows he's got to try and keep it relatively even when it comes to the watts that he's pushing, the heart rate that he's holding. There'll be subtle little adjustments on that seat. Times coming a little bit further forward, other times just sitting a little bit further back as he goes up some of the climbs. Be very aware of the environmental factors, making sure that he does stay cool. Astana team looking still comfortable. We saw the blue jersey of the leading Asian rider after stage one, Hassan Saifullah Haifad. Another one of these riders out of Iran. Coming through VF Group Bardiani. Manuel Torosi, very much a rider who has the ability to win this race as well. The likes of Luca Colnaghi. And of course the great sprinter Enrico Zanincello. Just saw the New Zealander Aaron Gate there, the #1 rider for Astana. Did win the Tour of Hainan last year over here in China, so is very familiar with conditions. On the National Road Race Championships back in 2024, the National Time Trial Champion in 2021, 2023. World Champion on the track back in 2013 in the Omnium, and then the points race in 2023. So it'll be interesting to see what the strategy is with the Astana team. So look back through the vehicles, the support teams, spare bikes. They will be in an order, and it will be up to the domestics and the teams to drop back to the cars, just put their hand up. They'll be aware of when the climbs are coming. They would have done their homework. They'll know that they want to make sure that they are well and truly hydrated, that they're well and truly fed by the time they do get to this last 40 kilometres, when things start to go back uphill. But still a very good ride coming. Here from the man from Switzerland riding for Li Ning Star. Great opportunity for one of the local trade teams to possibly really give the Chinese people something to celebrate. While he might not be from China, Simon Hello, Li Ning is a very, very well-established sports brand in China, and they'll see him very much as their own. Incredible infrastructure in this part of northern China. Really, really is a very beautiful part of the world. Qinghai Lake, of course, the largest lake in China. Riders not this year going to Cheka, the Salt Lakes of Cheka. Worth checking out if you ever do decide to come to China. See the incredible statues that are carved out of what they basically call saltbergs, almost like icebergs, only salt. If you get a chance to go to the Dead Sea, well, next best would be the town of Cheka, up here in the Qinghai province of China. So Qinghai, it's an inland province in northwestern China. The largest province of China by area, and has the third smallest population. It's the capital where we saw the athletes race yesterday, the city of Xining, 2.5 million people. Based up on the Tibetan plateau. Tianure Hotel cycling team also now deciding to come through to the front and possibly look to do a bit of work as well. Yeah, Great Wall of China. Absolutely stunning scenery. Really quite remarkable. One of the few man-made landmarks that you can see from space. Just continue to see this peloton slowly trying to just wear down this remarkable performance from Simon Pelot, the Swiss rider riding for Leaning Star. The fact that he's been managed to hold them off for so long, that gap is still out over 2 minutes. Just over 51 kilometres remaining. Last 30 kilometres probably downhill. Couple of little undulations, but if he can get himself over the top of the Shuaibe Yaku climb, he may have a chance. Do we see, however, one of the riders from Astana, possibly one of the riders from Caja Rural, VF Group Bardiani, the Quick Pro team, the likes of Oscar Kut, Martin Lass, look to somehow try and attack the rest of this peloton. So interesting to see Aaron Gate go back in the role of domestique. Just seeing Caja Rural moving up the outside there, Garcia Fernandez. They are a very, very good outfit indeed. And they are one team that are comfortable with their head above the clouds. A Spanish team. Joan Bol, one of the big riders, looking to try and see if he can launch himself from Caja Rural up this final climb as we go back to our race leader, Simon Pelot. As they like to say in Europe, Simon Pelot. Wonderful to see the crowds. They really do get behind this tour here in Magnificent Qinghai. It's the 24th edition of the race. Still maintaining that good form. Just having a little bit of a look around, just trying to see if he can get just a little bit of a pickup from this crowd. Got to be careful, big adrenaline rush can pick you up, can also bring you back down. But enjoying the moment. You do wonder what is going through the head of this 32-year-old out of Switzerland. 2 riders out of Switzerland in this year's tour. In fact, Spain have the most with 23 riders. Italy have 19. China have 15 riders. Great to see the Chinese really starting to establish themselves here. Australia have 9. New Zealand have 6 riders. Estonia, Eritrea have 6. Kazakhstan 5. Russia 5. Mongolia 4. So very much a truly international race with more than 38 countries represented across the 155 riders. The 22 teams that are taking part in this year's Tour of Magnificent Qinghai, the 24th edition. It's one of these little undulations, and that's how things will roll for the next few kilometres before the final climb of the day. The last victory for Simon Pelor was 105 days ago, and that was the Princess Maha Chakri Shuridawn Cup, the Tour of Thailand. He won the first stage of that. Now you just get a sense too that peloton are just starting to make some significant gains, and here come the Burgos boys out of Spain. Big George Jackson, another one of the New Zealanders with the long hair and the mullet, as it's affectionately known in Australia and New Zealand, that part of the world. And now they do start the climb up the Shohei Yaku mountain. It does peak towards the top. It's a nasty little climb. Is this where we do start to see a few riders look to attack out of the peloton, look to try and launch themselves possibly into GC contention, certainly knowing what is coming in the days ahead. While we're high at altitude, a lot of the stages traditionally do end up in bunch sprints. So the climbs that do come, the individual GC riders do need to take their chance. Just start to see the intensity begin to lift now. This is where things do start to heat up. This is where you've got to have a head like granite. This is about mental fortitude. Not just mental now. Now it becomes incredibly physical, and you can just see that long line of riders as this 32-year-old out of Switzerland, Simon Pelor, continues to lead stage 2. Does he believe? Still looks balanced. Still looks like he's maintaining some good form here. Looking pretty comfortable. Just tries to mix it up, get out of the seat, just use that slightly different muscle group. Just try and give himself every chance of just not burning too many matches, trying to recover. Yeah, a lot of riders will always prefer to stay seated when they climb. Others will prefer to climb out of their seat. You probably feel more comfortable naturally seated, but it's always important to learn to climb effectively out of your seat, because it just gives you that different muscle group. It just gives you that opportunity to somehow recover, particularly in these long stage races. Learn to become a good climber in and out of the seat. as the Astana boys still just continue to dance and press on the pedals, trying to shut this break down. Do we see the likes of Henok Mulebrand possibly look to attack? The man from Eritrea, the African continental champion on 3 occasions, wearing that jersey with pride too, sitting there with the white, yellow, green and black stripe across it, sitting about 4th wheel. Aaron Gate also poised. The Kaha Rural boys just starting to move up too, just on the right hand side there. Their colours of predominantly white with green. Just see how warm it is out there, certainly at the finish line where we are broadcasting from. Mercury has got up, a little bit of a breeze too. It'll be a little bit of a headwind sprint finish if it does come down to a bunch sprint. Just going back through that Cachet Body Wrap team, the Australian team. The predominantly dark blue and black. He'll also be experienced enough to know that probably his day will come to an end at some point. But there are valuable King of the Mountain points up for grabs at the top of the Shubei Yaku climb. 7 points for the first rider over the top, 5 for the second, 3 for the third, 2 for fourth and 1 for 5. We saw the Beishan Yaku climb, which they went over at around about the 35 kilometre mark, and it was Pilot who ended up picking the maximum 9 points, so very much an opportunity to ride himself into the King of the Mountains jersey. And I think that would be a very, very successful day for him, and it'll be a very proud day too for the Li Ning Star team. You can just see though the heat, the altitude. Big George Jackson there from Burgos in the purple and pink. Well, the team that are just sitting back being patiently too is Gipo Kern Farmer team. They are predominantly all in green. Got the likes of Mikel Fernandez. He's a sprinter, fast finisher. So another one potentially to watch this afternoon if it does come down to a group sprint finish. Actually got a real breakaway specialist in that team too, Ibon Ruiz. Astana still looking comfortable though. Happy just to control and dictate the pace at the moment. They won't be so much overly concerned about chasing down Simon Pelot. It's more around preventing other riders possibly from going up the road. If you set a pretty strong tempo on the front, it does make it very hard for an individual rider to attack. They might be able to go 2 or 3k an hour quicker, but that's going to be a hold it for too much longer. And we did just see the size of that peloton just starting to come apart. It's certainly a lot smaller than what we first saw this morning. 155 riders in this year's tour. So Michele Gazzoli for Astana, arguably their sprinter in the team. Does he back himself to try and steal a stage win in a team that, well, it's predominantly climbers and GC riders? A few teams are probably set up purely around sprinting. Probably the best team in doing that would be the Solution Tech Vini Fantini team with the likes of David Baldacchini, Attilio Viviani, the Italian, the likes of Andrea Piraz. Arnaud Tissiers is also a very good sprinter, so somewhat surprised yesterday we didn't really see them come to the fore towards the end of stage one, which was always going to be a sprint finish. But do keep an eye on Solution Tech and Vini Fantini. Colours are black with the yellow sleeves. The question with the sprinters is how many of them have survived the climbs, how many of the sprinters are actually still in the peloton. So that gap almost under a minute now. Just start to see this gradient just begin to go, and you do just sense that Astana just starting to tighten the screws a little bit. Maybe it's the first time just starting to see Palor here just a little bit more fatigued, doesn't look quite as smooth. That's understandable. He has been out for 110 kilometres on his own. Bit of a smile here, but I think he realises that his day is done. He'll just want to get to the top of the climb if he can, pick up those valuable King of the Mountain points. So contrast on the gears, we saw him earlier. So smaller chainring on the front. In fact, if he is running two chainrings, often a lot of the riders these days opt just for the one chainring on the front. And then obviously his it's amazing the technology, how things have just changed in the sport of cycling, as we just see a little bit of a split here. Not sure one side's particularly favoured, except they all lose sight of each other briefly. Scati riders finding themselves have to go to the right, and this was just picking up the sprint points from earlier, and that was at 102.3 kilometres. So doing well in terms of picking up sprint points, also King of the Mountain points. And these were the riders looking to pick up those valuable sprint points in second, third and fourth. Might have been George Jackson from Burgos there, potentially got across and picked up 4 valuable points. It was in fact 3 points, my apologies. Simon Palou picking up 5 and Guillermo Silva picking up the 1 point. A rider that a lot of people is arguably, along with Henok Mulu-Brand, one of the pre-race favourites. Now we start to see the riders getting out of their seats. It just starts to pick up here a little bit. Start to see more riders just drift off the back here as the Astana start to tighten the screws. Burgos now beginning to buy into it too. Euskaltel starting, and the orange starting to come towards the front too. So if you're not a good climber, you want to be towards the front of this peloton so that by the time you get to the top of the climb, at the very least, you're just sitting off the back, and then you can use the downhill to try and get yourself back on, because once they do come over the Shuaibei Yaku climb, it is very much downhill through to the finish line. In fact, it'll be a drag of around about 30 kilometres through to the finish line, which will be predominantly downhill. A little bit of undulation, but you imagine that the group that gets over the top will in fact fight it out for a sprint finish, which historically is the way this stage has ultimately ended up going. But we did see one of the gutsiest performances last year in this race, when Eric Fagundes for Burgos managed to stay away somehow. Very unlucky not to win the Tour in 2023. Fagundes ended up losing it by about a second. I think there might have been 2 seconds in the finish to Henok Mulu-Brand on the final stage. A little bit of controversy over how that stage finished, but it did go for the man from Eritrea. Fagundes thought he had done enough. But They decided, in fact, the peloton hadn't stayed together, that Henok Mulebran, in fact, had sprinted and separated himself by a clear 2 or 3 seconds to snatch the jersey on the line and again create a real moment of nationalism for the people of Eritrea. So Simon Pelluel, what a gutsy performance from him. Wonderful opportunity, at very least, to actually leverage Li Ning, sports brand here in China, take that brand to the world, which is, I guess, the reason why these corporates, these businesses do get behind these teams. It is ultimately a business decision. It is ultimately about leveraging particular brands, or in the case of some teams, countries possibly. How good was it yesterday for Team Polti Visit Malta with Manuel Peñalva winning that stage and starting day 2 in the yellow jersey. Nowhere to be seen, as expected, being a pure sprinter. So we will see the yellow jersey on the shoulder of another rider. So just under around 46 seconds between the peloton and our race leader. Still Astana continue to just dance on the pedals, just put the hurt on the rest of the peloton. Which will make for a very unpredictable sprint finish, with a lot of the marquee sprinters clearly not in this peloton. So somewhat of an unknown opportunity, possibly for the likes of Aaron Gate. Comes from a very good track background as we go back through the peloton. And Nij Komachu got into that break initially. Very, very good yesterday. Very aggressive rider. Riding for the Factor Racing team. He is the national champion in the individual time trial for Slovenia. Won that this year. Another little attack, another little pressing on the pedals, more hurt going on. Kaharuru boys just jumping across it. Let's go back through. George Jackson, the New Zealander. Well, he's starting to suffer. How good is his downhill skills? Because he will have an opportunity over the last 30 kilometres to try and get back on. Let's just see if we can have a look at that setup. Just looking like he's got possibly just the one chain ring on that front. No, running 2. 2 hilly a day for that. Often the technology comes down to the individual rider, what best suits them, what best suits their individual physiology. But the 2 big teams, Kaha Rural and the Astana boys, dictating and controlling the front of the peloton, controlling stage 2 of the 24th running of the Tour of Magnificent Qinghai, this remarkably beautiful province northwest China. These riders on the front, well, they'll do as much work as they can until they basically blow themselves to pieces. Sort of wave the white flag and that'll be their day. But they've done the job asked of them. Hopefully set up the stage victory for one of their teammates and then share in the glory. It can be a hard sport at times. We often only ever remember the stage winners or the race winners. We forget the workers that allowed for their particular teammate to win a stage. So often a lot of these races, the winner will get the trophy and get the title, keep the yellow jersey, but the prize money will then get split between the rest of the riders without the race winner actually receiving any, knowing that they'll probably pick that up in endorsements and potentially bonuses within their contracts. So starting to get towards the top of the climb, and then it will be basically a 30-kilometre almost downhill finish. Through the township of Huzhu, where a large crowd waits for them. There's been plenty of activity in this small town. A lot of activation from the sponsors, music bands, a lot of traditional Chinese music and dance, remarkable costumes, very, very proud nation. And now just driving towards the top of Xiaobei Yaku. Good ride coming from Finn Walsh from the Qinghai Body Wrap team. And we just start to see the damage being done there on David Cardina, the Italian, riding for Petrolite. Cardina, of course, earlier in the year, winning the Oberösterreich Rundfahrt race, winning the GC on that. He is the National Road Champion of Mexico on 2 occasions, but it won't be his stage today, but he will live to fight another day. So 35 kilometres remaining. Almost at the top of the Xiaobei Yaku climb, which was 6.1 kilometres officially at an average gradient of 5.8%. A bit of a power climb for some of these riders. Nothing particularly steep, but what makes this so incredibly difficult is that these riders today have gone as high as 11,000 feet. And will be still above 10,000 feet at this point in the race. With altitude having an impact on the body at 2,000 feet, you've got to be comfortable with your head above the clouds. This race is going to hurt, whether it's a flat stage, whether it's a hilly stage, if the pace goes on. Interesting, just looking there too at Guillermo Silva, the man from Uruguay, wearing the national colours, has been the national road racing champion of Uruguay, looking very, very comfortable in the previous shot that we did see, just sitting back behind the team from Astana. He is the highest ranked rider on the UCI rankings at this year's event. Finished second last year in this race. Won the National Championship of Uruguay this year, also won it back in 2022. As we just have a look at some of the carnage as these riders just drop back through the peloton. Enoch Mulebran, man from Eritrea, sitting second wheel. The Astana team of Aaron Gate, Michele Gazzoli, Harold Martin Lopez, Florian Samuel Kajamini, Anton Kuzman, Santiago Umba, and as mentioned, Enoch Mulebran. As we just take in some of the magnificent scenery here in this Qinghai province. To see the rapeseed, the yellow flower there in the background, which becomes more prevalent, more prominent as we move into stages 4, 5 and 6 particularly. As we get higher up, the highest point in this race will be just above 13,000 feet. Stage ends in the town of Chilean. Just now start to see the real concentration, the real effort the herd has been put on here. Guillermo Silva looking comfortable though. There he is in front of that little group. Now we start to see the Unibet, the Team of Rockets team here in the purple and sky blue, dancing on their pedals. Yeah, the Unibet, the Team of Rockets. You've got Cedric Christopherson, Abram Stockman, Andrea Stockbro, former World Tour rider, Danish under-23 champion, very good time trialist and one-day racer. You've got Axel Huens, the likes of Giovanni Carboni, Martin Budding, very good versatile all-round rider. Won stages previously in the Olympia Tour and the Czech Tour. Zed Kiffin, now he's a very good climber as well, man out of Great Britain. As we see Enoch Mulebran now looking to try and just break this group up, looking to try and go on his own. So the first attack now comes from Astana. Immediately riders look to try and jump across the wheel. Here come the Burgos boys. This is really just to try and hurt them a little bit, just see if he can take the legs away. So Enoch Mulebran trying to maybe pick up those King of the Mountain points too. Get himself into the King of the Mountains jersey if he can. Jersey that he won last year. We see just a little bit of a sprint here over the top of the climb. Joined there by a rider out of China, Anta Mentec cycling team. Another one of these Chinese trade teams that are full of international riders with group of homegrown talent as well, trying to develop the sport in this part of China as we take in some more of this remarkable scenery at the top of the Xiaobei Yaku climb. And look at that wonderful piece of engineering, which is so typical of China. If you can dream it, they build it. Not sure the riders will be enjoying the scenery so much. They'll probably look back and reflect and watch some of the TV coverage and go, oh, I was suffering so much. I was literally trying to breathe through my eyelids to get oxygen in that I didn't really get a chance to have a wee look around. As we just go back through and have a look at the carnage, as we now just start to see that peloton, it has just blown to pieces, hasn't it, towards the top of this climb. We're down to maybe a dozen riders. Mulubran continues to sit there, second wheel coming from Burgos. Big Maria Apalizio might be the rider there for Burgos. Now more riders looking to try and just come across towards the top of this climb. We talked about just under a 6% gradient, but that's on average. So we've seen some really sort of flat stretches, which means at parts it can peak anywhere up to 8 to 9%. Caja Rural now being represented. Riders from Kipo Kern Farmer, Uskatalu Stadi, VF Group Bardiani as well being represented. Still in the mix there is Martin Lopez, number 3 for Astana. Now VF Group Bardiani, Faizani, good race starting to develop here. Still that second pack, still not that far back, almost at the top of this climb. As we now see a rider from Uskatalu Stadi looking to try and grab those vital King of the Mountain points. Often the riders that we don't talk about are the ones that come to the front towards the end of the stages. They're patient, they sit back, they don't burn too many matches, and that's a good little break coming from this particular rider. Might be Jordi Lopez, John Aguirre. Certainly got Hassan Saifola Haifad from Tianyude, who went with that initial break from Hinok Malulabran. Riders that have been dropped from the peloton are the likes of Anton Kuzman, Nish Komak and Cyrus Monk, who were part of that initial break earlier on today. But this is going to hurt well above 10,000 feet. Heart rate is high. They'll feel like they are suffocating literally. As I like to say, you can't get the oxygen in through the nose, through the mouth, so you start to find, if you can just get it through the eyelids, you got the bonfires in the legs and the razor blades attacking the lungs, as we see Hinok Malulabran looking to try and pick up more King of the Mountain points as they go over the top of the climb. confirm those results for you shortly. Now, who can tax on the downhill? We so often talk about attacks on the uphill, but the good downhill riders still have the ability to attack on the downhill. There will be a chance for all of these riders just to catch their breath, though. Allow gravity to take over, bring the heart rates down. And the question is, can the Astana boys rejoin this front group? Very good sprinter, Henoch Mulubran, man from Eritrea, currently sitting fourth. So Jordi Lopez, the rider from Euskaltel Stadi, first over the top of the climb. Henoch Mulubran second, and then it might have been the man from Burgos, and we'll confirm it for you. Jumbalja Zingbia. So Jean-Valjean Jingaba is the man from Burgos who did go over the top with the likes of Jordi Lopez and Henoch Mulubran. Another very good performance coming too from Manuele Torosi, number 65, riding for VF Group Bardiani. Guillermo Silva from Astano. My apologies. From Caja Rural. Just a little bit of a crash. That's not good at all. That'll just be concentration. That is fatigue, folks, kicking in. And that's sometimes when you're that tired, you just lose a little bit of the concentration. So number 197, we understand, is one of the riders that has just come down in that crash. And that will be James Grzanich for the Xiaoxing Vinoa Taishan Sport Team. So Manuele Torosi looking to try and get away with Jordi Lopez here. See if they can maybe steal this stage win with 27 kilometres to go, but now the chase is on. You do expect the peloton to come back together at some point. So Manuele Torosi, the Italian, won a stage in the Tour of Qinghai Lake last year, one stage in the Tour of Langkawi last year, Tour de Ronda back in 2023, was third on GC here last year, so plenty of experience. Zingbia of Burgos still in the chase. So Zingbia picking up 3 points over the top of the climb. It was Henoch Mulubran who picked up the 5 points and Jordi Lopez who picked up the 7 for that King of the Mountains. Now we see the chase coming, and two will become about 12 or 13 shortly. So we started with just over 150 riders this morning. Such has been the brutality of this stage. We are literally down to around about a dozen, possibly 20 riders at max, to ultimately try and see if they can win this stage. Be happy just to hang them out. I think Jordi Lopez says, look, I'm done, I'm cooked. Little flick of the elbow there coming in from Manuele Torossi. He says, no, I can't come through. Just give me a little bit more time to recover. I'll try and help you out where I can. And now more riders looking to try and just jump across. Ultimately, you'd like to have 4 or 5 riders in a break who work effectively together. Sometimes 6 or 7 can get a little disorganised. 4's a good number, 5's a good number. Pain Train back in action as we just take in some of this just remarkable scenery here in the magnificent Qinghai province of northwest China. Altitude around 8,000 feet, possibly a little higher at the moment. Reached a height of just over 11,000 today. They'll finish at 7,500 feet. Still on the attack, Manuele Torossi. Just wonder just how tired the riders behind them are. What have they got left? They'll need each and every one of them just to come to the front and do their work as we go back and just have a look at Josh Kench, a member of the Li Ning Star, one of those riders that took a bit of a crash, tough bike rider. He'll live to fight another day. This is this chase group. So Guillermo Silva, the Uruguayan road racing champion, decides to go, and they automatically jump across. They know how much of a danger he is. Henok Mulubran still sitting there, the African Continental champion, number 6. So Guillermo Silva from Kaha Rural looking to try and jump across, get onto the wheel of Cepeda, man from Petro Like. Haven't seen a lot of them today. So Edison Alejandro Calais, Jose Antonio Prito, Jonathan Cleaver Casado, David Cadena, and Carlos Alfonso Garcia are the riders for Petro Like. we drop back towards the back of what was once the peloton. And that's just going back, having a look at that crash from a little bit earlier on today. So, in fact, not live. That happened around about 5 or 6 minutes ago. So Jonathan Casado has been joined by Guillermo Silva. We can update that from you. Hope those riders are okay. Wonderful medical support and treatment supporting this particular bike race, as always. And Sierra Sanchez, another one who's had a pretty tough day. We'll just be happy to ride through to the finish line. So we do apologise earlier too. We were giving you Manuele Tarosi as the leader up front. In fact, it has been Jonathan Casado. Do apologise for that. A really, really gutsy ride from this man. And from Ecuador, he won the Pan American Championships back in 2016. He won a stage in the Giro d'Italia back in 2020. Three-time national champion of Ecuador. The individual time trial, won that back in 2015, 2019, 2023. So he is one man you'd love to have in a break with you. He has that time trialing ability, that ability just to keep it above 50 kilometres an hour for a decent stretch of time, maintain some good form. And the likes of Henok Mulubran will be aware of the danger sitting on his wheel too, because one of the big threats, the man with the highest UCI rankings, Guillermo Silva, is alongside of him. But you do just sense now that this group of around a dozen riders will shut this break down, and then potentially another opportunity for more riders to attack. Some sore bodies tomorrow. That is the nature of the cycling. Could understand, not so much today, but they can hit speeds of 100 kilometres an hour on some of the descents, and you've only got to get your lines wrong. They don't get a chance to really come here and ride the climbs and gather intel on the descents. The only positive for this particular rider is the fact that it's predominantly a downhill finish. Around about 20 kilometres remaining. As we see our two leaders attack the downhill. Still trying to stay away. Guillermo Silva, he'll be burning a few matches to do this. He's still got another 6 stages to go. One of the race favourites, clearly coming from Uruguay. Fairly comfortable with his head above the clouds. Really good support here from Jonathan Casado. Man from Ecuador, so the South Americans comfortable at high altitude, comfortable in these conditions. How organised is the chase group that includes the likes of Martin Lopez, Henok Mulubran, the likes of John Aguirre, Mikel Bicara, Jordi Lopez, so Escatel Ustadi have 3 riders in that chase group. Mario Abrizio is also there. Fernando Barcello, Giovanni Carboni, Manuele Tarosi in the group as well. So a very, very good group of riders chasing. 17.7 kilometres to go. 151 kilometre race on stage 2. 130 kilometres of hope and 21 kilometres of truth, and we're very much at that threshold now. 115 is Alexander Mernick. Number 81 is Ludovico Crescioli. Prisioli, another one of the Italians, has won a stage in the Tour of... My apologies, has won a stage in the Tour of de Slovenia back in 2024. Now in the time trial gear. Just look at the focus, look at the concentration. Just down in that tuck position. Contrasting time trial form on these road bikes for these two riders. Casido deciding to go onto the drop bars. Guillermo Silva prefers to just stay up on top of the hoods and just bring the elbows into play and try and find a more traditional aerodynamic position. But at the moment, this group of 12 riders just hanging them out to dry a little bit. Remainder of the peloton 33 seconds back. How big that group is, well, we really don't know, because there's been a bit of chaos and carnage on the descent. A little bit of flick of the elbow coming from Guillermo Silva, says come through. Jonathan Casido says okay, and we'll look to just try and come through nice and smooth, nice and even. They'll be talking to each other. It's in their best interest to work together. Will be fatigued though from some very, very big climbs, and the fact that I keep reiterating we are at around about 10,000 feet in altitude. They will come down to around about 7,500 feet by the time they do hit the finish line. Now we see one of the riders from Uruguay Stadi, possibly Mikel Biscara, looking to try and jump across. Also going with them, Mario Aprizio from Burgos. Giovanni Cobani, another one of the Italians in that group too, alongside of Alex Tollio, Ludovico Crescioli. Third of the Italians in this chase group of 12. So 14 kilometres remain. They'll just be looking to try and knock this off, small pieces, piece by piece. Wonderful camera work coming from our moto team. There's the camera work from our helicopter, world-class camera crews from Europe and also local talent here in China. So Mario Abrizio and Mikel Biscara are the two riders in that middle group. 10 riders behind. Well, they need to stay organised. They want to try and just shut this group down. In fact, it looks like possibly a few more riders have joined that chase group. So what was 12 riders could now be well and truly over 20. 16-second gap. They have absolutely committed themselves here. There's Guillermo Silva and Jonathan Casido. There is no plan B for them. Mario Aprizio is on the charge. Mikel Biscara from Uruguay Stadi sits there. Says come through, says take some work. Look at the contrasting. A small man doesn't quite have that power, doesn't quite have that time trialing ability that you suggest Mario Aprizio does have. So Aprizio might just spend a little bit longer on the front. Just ask for Biscara to come through, just allow a little bit of recovery. But you do just now sense this peloton, which has now come together and is starting to gain some real urgency. Very hard to ride away from a peloton. It's a unique science. The riders at the front pulling the riders behind, the riders at the back pushing the riders at the front, two forces working together. That's why if you find yourself in the middle of it, you can be sitting comfortably at 55 kilometres an hour. Meanwhile, the rider on the front, who's doing the work, his heart rate is through the roof, and they are basically locked in the hurt box. See there the contrasting cadence of both riders. Guillermo Silva, lower, bigger gear. Casado, well, spins a lot more. Not as smooth a bike rider as we see from Guillermo Silva, but sometimes form's important, but you can have what we call riding economy. Just similar to what you see in running. I'll talk about running economy. You can see some runners that look pretty ugly, I guess, but yet are very, very efficient. And so it'll all come down to efficiency. You'll always get some riders or sportsmen in certain sports who will look a little bit more unorthodox, but can be very effective. And you do just sense that a lot of the Astana boys are back together here, the likes of Aaron Gate, who still have the ability to possibly steal the stage, win the New Zealander. Lucas de Rossi, a Frenchman, also in this chase group. 29 years of age, third in the Malaysian International Classic race back in 2020. Good GC rider. Riding for another one of the Chinese trade teams, the China Anta Mentec cycling team. So the Unibet, see Team of Rockets rider on the front. In fact, 3 or 4 of that particular team still in contention for the stage victory. Abraham Stockman, Belgian rider, punchy classic style rider, 6th overall of the Tour of Bretagne back in 2023. Mentioned earlier the likes of Andreas Stockbro, former World Tour rider, Danish under-23 champion. Martin Budding, very good versatile all-round rider. Stage wins at the Olympia Tour and the Czech Tour. We've got Seb Kiffin, very good climber. So go back here and have a look at Cepeda. It's a lot smoother now, but how good does this man look? 19 seconds is the gap, 8.7 kilometres. Do they believe? Can they hang on? Can one of these two riders steal the stage in what has been a brutal day? They won't be talking. They understand what is required. They understand the job at hand. The stage last year was won brilliantly by Eric Fagundes of Burgos. Wouldn't they love to go back-to-back Burgos with the likes of Mario Abrizio in this group, as we now start to see Gipo Kerner farmer team come to the front, looking to try and set up a stage victory for them. Team includes the likes of Miguel Angel Fernandez, Ivan Cobo, Antonio Jesus Soto, Ibon Ruiz, Very much a breakaway specialist is Ruiz, mountain jersey winner at the Volta a la Comunidad Valenciana. Got the likes of Ibai Azania as well there. So that gap, 17 seconds, just hanging. Guillermo Silva and Jonathan Casido out to dry a little bit. So you guys just keep burning a lot of matches up there, particularly the likes of Astana, the likes of Equipo Kern Farmer team. They'll be aware of the danger that Guillermo Silva presents in the days coming. So if they can just force him to burn a few matches and get no result from it, and what I mean by burning matches, burning energy, will it ultimately come back and just affect him? And the stage is still to come, where the riders will go as high as 13,500 feet. Looking pretty comfortable though. Both very good time trial exponents. So I can tell you that we do have Harold Martin Lopez, Henok Malulbran from Astana in this chase group. Luca Govili, Emanuele Tarossi, Alex Tolio, from VF Group Bardiani are in the main peloton. Antonio Soto and Ibai Azania are the two riders from Equipo Kern Farmer. Ten seconds now, peloton in pursuit, 5 kilometres to go. Now it's around concentrations, it's around team tactics. The escapee is about to be caught. Crowds begin to build in the town of Huzhu. Slight downhill finish into what appears to be just maybe a slight headwind, as we see Equipo Kern Farmer, Unibet, Titema Rockets, the two teams on the front of the chase group, looking to try and set up a stage victory for one of their teammates. 4 kilometres to go. Do they believe? Keep an eye on the very talented Guillermo Silva. He's a rider who has the ability to potentially go on his own. Burgos on there, Euskaltel Ustadi. Anatoly Budiak from Terengganu cycling team, also in that chase group. It can be a cruel sport at times. Will it come down to these two? Will it come down to a sprint finish? If you're a betting man, you would say the latter. But sometimes when you've got a peloton with riders represented from a lot of different teams, you can get a little bit of disorganisation, and we're starting to see that. No one really prepared to take up the chase at the moment. As long as they're looking at each other, it's going to favour these two. You'd have to say Guillermo Silva, probably the better of the two finishers. Can they hang on remarkable athletes, the mental fortitude required here. You've got to have a head like granite. Look at the heart of these two men. You cannot imagine the hurt and the suffering that they are under. Jonathan Caicedo, Guillermo Silva. They continue to dance on the pedals. They continue to put the power down. They'll be inside the 2 kilometre marker shortly. The main peloton still looks a little disorganised. Everyone looking over their shoulder. You chased. Why are you not doing the work? They're saying to each other. And in those moments of hesitation, those moments and those lack of concentration, these two riders start to believe. Little flick of the elbow from Guillermo Silva. Jonathan Caicedo says, I'll come through, I'll do my work. Who has the legs? Can they even afford to look back at this point? The smallest of margins. Settle back, folks. Stage 2, the 24th running of the Tour of Magnificent Qinghai is about to come to a conclusion. They swing around. Large crowds will await these two. Will it be a day to remember for Guillermo Silva of Uruguay? Or will it be a day to remember for Jonathan Caicedo, the man from Ecuador? Here come the chase group now. We saw a very similar situation last year where Eric Fagundes, also from Uruguay, grabbed the victory here in a similar situation. He somehow found a way to hang on. Will Uruguay go back to back? Fagundes in 24. Will it be Guillermo in 2025? Guillermo Silva, Jonathan Caicedo, Henoc Mulubran starts to chase the man who won the race in 2023, the man from Eritrea, but they come back across the road, not far to go. Who's going to pick up? Who's going to grab the stage? And it will be the brilliant man from Uruguay, the national road racing champion, Guillermo Silva, by the smallest of margins over Jonathan Caicedo, and then on Hulu, and then Henoc Mulubran of Eritrea. So for 2 years in a row, it's an Uruguayan rider that has grabbed stage 2 of this great race. What a performance from him. Patient on the climbs, patient all day. Great work from his Kaharuru team. Second last year on GC. He'd love to go back, he'd love to win it this year. And he sent a message today because he looked remarkable. As we take in the celebrations, and you just felt that, well, Caicedo was never quite going to have the power that Guillermo Silva possessed. And when he launched the attack, well, it was just a simple case, really, wasn't it? Of just using the road. Comfortable win in the finish. Henoc Mulubran. Man from Eritrea, the African continental champion, will come across the line in third place and pick up valuable seconds, valuable sprint race points, and try and keep himself in contention. Try and stay in touch with Guillermo Silva, who you just sense now has taken this race by the scruff of the neck.